Hi everyone, welcome to DevOps Info channel. In one of our previous videos, we had a look at how to onboard the Windows 10 devices in Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. Today, in this video, we look at how to manage the endpoint security uh, from the Microsoft Defender. So after the devices are onboarded, you could see them here. You see the devices are onboarded successfully, and then you see all the devices which is present in the endpoint. So the next step is to manage them. There are multiple ways to control the endpoint settings. Um, for example, when you go into the overview, in the overview, it gives you the option protect and secure devices from one place. And then there's an option you can define uh, recommended security settings. Like these are the security baselines that you can define on your devices that can be used to manage and monitor. Uh, The first task is you can start from the overview and then start the security baseline. But the important part is like you can define the security baselines. Uh, for instance, for Windows 10 devices or Defender for Endpoint or even the browsers. But this is available only when your environment meets the prerequisites for using them. For example, the baseline is optimized for the physical devices, yeah, and it's not at the moment of this video, it's not recommended for use on the virtual machines or the video endpoints because certain baseline settings that can affect the remote interactive sessions on the virtualized environment. So just in case if you're going to do this on a virtualized environment, it's always recommended to define this for small set of pilot groups and then see like the results and you can proceed further. So and also the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is available only when your environment meets the prerequisite. So like you should understand if it's a physical devices, then you can always go ahead. And then there are multiple settings which we'll have a look at in a few minutes. Uh, and the other important point is you need to have Azure ready groups that can be categorized so that it will be easy for you to manage the devices and see in which groups the devices is applied and what are the policies you have. Because if you onboard the devices already in a group, then it is easy for you. Okay, these Windows 10 devices can have these groups. So it's always better to maintain a group. Uh, and the other important part is please avoid multiple policies deploying into the same devices because I have also seen this conflict in multiple deployments. So because the device configuration profile, because in Intune, the device configuration profile, you have an opportunity to deploy multiple instances. When you do the multiple instances, it will create a conflict. So for example, if you have a Windows Defender configuration on the device configuration profile, and if you try to define some tweaking on the Windows Defender in the endpoint security profile, they both will have a conflict. So it will, because the device at the end will receive two configurations and it will try to understand which policies it needs to apply. So at the end, it will create a conflict. So, for example, you have some antivirus exclusions on the configuration profile, and then you have some enforcements on the endpoint security profile. So this will create a conflict, and then the policies will not be applied because it has two separate configurations. So it's always recommended to do a deep study of the current environment, understand what are the current configuration profile, if it is any applied on the Intune, and then you need to clone them to the endpoint security profile, and then decommission the device configuration profile in Intune. So this is one of the important point. You just need to have only one configuration profile for the endpoint security. Okay. So while coming to talk about the security baselines, I'm just going to the security baselines which you see in the screen. On the left, you have the security baseline for Windows 10, Microsoft Defender for endpoint baseline, and Microsoft Edge baseline. And also there is Windows 365 security baseline, which is in preview. When going to the security baseline for Windows 10 and later, you can create a profile, multiple profiles. In this example, I have just created one baseline for Windows 10 devices. And then this baseline is actually defined by Microsoft. This baseline is created by Microsoft, and then they will, update this baseline every, every once and then. But I'm not sure about the timeline, but the baseline will be updated very often. So if you see, the current baseline is November 2010. So in this baseline, if I go further for the Windows 10 devices, at the moment, I am not assigned any devices. But when you go to the properties, in the configurations settings, there are multiple things which you can define. For example, when I go to the browser, I can just block the password manager, and then I can block the malicious site access, block unverified file download. These are the security baselines. And also, for example, in the device lock, I can just go and select a required password, and then the password expiration. And then the prevent reuse of previous passwords. These are all coming in the device lock. And when you talk about the other things, like for example, you have the local policies, security options. Even here, you have block remote logon, and then minutes of lock screen inactivity, required server digitally signing, communication always. There are multiple things you can define based on your requirement. And also, for example, in the firewall, I can also enable the inbound connections blocked, or if I want to uh, block a specific connection, I can do that. So there are multiple things which you can define in the security baseline, but it's better to uh, have a detailed study on this and do based on your environment. And when coming to talk about, this is the one which we have for the security baselines, which is available for Windows 10 and later. And the next one is for the Defender. So when we talk about the Defender, this is for the scanning itself. When you go into the Defender, when you create in the settings, you can also select okay, like when you want the scan to start. For example, when you go into the Microsoft Defender, turn on the real-time protection, and then uh, scan downloaded files and attachment. That is also possible. And then when you want to schedule scan to start, and then cloud delivered protection level, and turn on cloud delivered protection. There are multiple things which you can define in the Microsoft Defender part. And when you talk about the device installation, you can also do block hardware installation by setup classes, and then remove matching hardware devices. If you want to particularly do block particular hardware devices, you can do that. And also in the firewall, you can also set up further uh, the the firewall profile if you want to block few inbound connections, and then if you want to block any particular outbound connections, you can do that. These are the security baselines. Um, and you see on the left side there is something called security tasks. So these security tasks are something as a result of the baselines. If you see anything that needs an action, you see all the devices and the remediation types, priority status, which will be easy for the SOC analyst to review and take action on that. So this is the overview of it. Having talked about the overview, let's go into the management part. The management part, like you can define a lot of policies. For example, antivirus, disk encryption, firewall, endpoint detection and response, and there are multiple things. So we'll have a look at a few things today, and the rest of the things we'll have a look at in the next video, because I don't want to make a very lengthy video on this part. So while coming to talk about the antivirus, yes, you can define a antivirus policy, multiple antivirus policy based on a requirement. If you want to define a policy based on country, department, that is possible. So in this example, I have defined one Microsoft Defender for policy for Windows 10 devices. So here, for example, when I go to the policy itself, this is the policy, and in the policy, if you go to the configuration in the Defender, so here, this is something you are tweaking the settings. Like if you want the settings, if you for example, if you don't want to go with the baseline security, the baseline, you can come to the endpoint security antivirus and then define the policies per department or based on your requirement. So here I can define like allow full scan on removable drives as well. That is possible. Allow email scanning. Even you can do the email scanning. This will also scan the emails that's downloaded in the system and allow scanning of the network files. That is also possible. And also allow scanning of all downloaded files and attachments. That is also possible. So there are multiple things which is really helpful in terms of protecting your endpoint security. If you take a look at this, it would be really helpful for configuring your endpoint security based on your requirement. Okay, so this is the antivirus part. So while coming to talk about the overview, it will also give you a summary of okay, how many unhealthy endpoints you have, what are the pending full scan, and just in case if there are any inactive agents, even the inactive agents will also be shown here. Okay, these devices are not having active agents, so the sensor is not reporting to the endpoint security. So you can take a look at them. So these are the benefits of having the summary section. You have also unhealthy endpoints. It will give you the unhealthy endpoints and active malware. Just in case if it founds any active malware, you would be able to see them here and take action on them. Um, Having talked about the antivirus, yeah, this is a summary. If you want to further deep dive, then you need to study on the existing environment. What is the current policy you have? For example, if you have any third-party antivirus, what is the current antivirus policies, exclusions that is defined? Take a list and then see what are the options that you have it in the antivirus policy. Compare them, and then if you want to uh, enhance them, just use few of the rules and then go in that approach by applying them to a small set of pilot users. Always recommended to go with the pilot users first. Yeah. And the next one is the disk encryption. So this disk encryption is something like, as we all know, like a BitLocker drive encryption. It is a data protection feature that always integrates with operating system. For example, if a data theft, sorry, if a laptop is stolen, then in order to prevent from the data theft, if the BitLocker is if the drive is encrypted with BitLocker, then it won't be able. Then a user is it's not possible for him to view the data from that particular device. So it's always better if you enable this disk encryption. So the disk encryption, the one important point is like if you want to do the disk encryption, the device's disk should not be encrypted first. So if the device's disk is already been encrypted, then the endpoint security would not be able to uh, enable the protection of this. So you need to make sure that the status of the device encryption should the device disk should not be encrypted. So that is the important thing. So for example, I've created one. I've not assigned. So in the properties, when you go into the settings, here I can the BitLocker base settings. I can do enable full disk encryption. So when I do this, it will enable the full disk encryption for OS and fixed data drives. And then if I apply to Windows, then that will help in data theft, just in case if a laptop is stolen or misplaced somewhere. Even you can see like it is always mentioned in the information, if the drive was encrypted before this policy is applied, no action will be taken. So if the encryption method and options match of this policy, configuration should return success. Yeah. So configuration will likely return an error. So like if BitLocker configuration option does not match this policy, then the configuration will return an error. So this is what about the BitLocker encryption. And the next one we can talk about is the firewall. So in the firewall, you can further define in a granular level, like what kind of access you want to control inbound and outbound to the laptops. So when you create a firewall policy, it gives you an option to choose the platform, Windows and Mac OS, and later you can choose the profile. So in the profile, if you see there are two options, Microsoft Defender Firewall and then Microsoft Defender Firewall rules. So when you go with the Microsoft Defender for Firewall, this is an advanced security, and then you don't have much granularity. But when you go with the Microsoft Defender Firewall rules, then it will allow the administrator to define the granular firewall rules. For example, I would show one of the policy which I created. So here, if you go down, this is the configuration, the multiple configuration. But for example, I just created one firewall rule, which is like to allow the RDP. So I just gave the name RDP and the interface type is remote access, remote port range is 3389, and then like what are the direction. This allows to the inbound. So if anyone wants to take a RDP, local support wants to take an RDP to my laptop, then they can. This rule can be enabled. So this is just an example. So even if I further go into the edit, I can define multiple firewall rules. Like I can just simply go and click on add, and then I can just give it a name, and then if I click on edit rule, it will give me a lot of options. What is the name, file path, and then the network types. Even in the network types, if you see, you can create a firewall profile type for domain, private, public. So this is something like you're just creating the rule only within your network, or with a private network, or even to a external network public. So this is like something you can define based on your requirement. So this gives a lot of option to further drill down, and then provide more network security to your endpoints. And the last thing which we are going to see today is the endpoint detection and the response. uh, the endpoint detection and response is one of the capabilities in the Defender, Windows Defender, that will provide attack detections that are something going to happen in the future. So, like for example, when a threat is detected, then alerts are created in the system so that the analyst can investigate. So alerts with the same attack techniques, like they will be collected and then drill down for further analysis, and then action will be taken. So this is one of the best option to enable the endpoint detection response. I have just created one and also applied. So if you go to the endpoint detection and response, if you go to the settings, here it's the only option is like you will be sharing the files for the analysis, and then that one, like for example, when a threat is detected on your laptop, then it will continuously collect the behaviors. So this will include, like for example, the process information, the network activities, or like how the user login activities is happening, and if any changes is being done on the registry and file system, and other important things. So this information is also stored for 6 months, so enabling an analyst to travel back in time to the start of an attack. So this will help Microsoft to understand the current cyber attacks that's happening, and give more control to the endpoints. Uh, so having talked about it, I think let's stop in this part, because if we further continue, this video will go lengthy, which I don't want to make it. Let's have one more video on remaining part of how to utilize the other features, and how to deep dive on debugging part on the reported device. Like for example, how to do the debugging part, and how to do the monitoring part. Hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you.